Hi friends, Krista here. Thanks for stopping by Books and Jams. Today we are going to be doing my final wrap-up of January reads from 2025. I do have a stack of books that I talked about mid-month, and I'm not going to be talking about those here. I had one DNF for the month, and that was Wintering by Catherine May. And then these books I read in the first half of the month. Exiles by Jane Harper, The Sugar Queen by Sarah Addison Allen, The Last Love Note by Emma Gray, Nothing But the Truth by Avi, The Words We Lost by Nicole Deese, The Light Pirate by Lily Brooks Dalton, The Appeal by Janice Hallett, and Welcome to the Hunam Dong Bookshop by Huang Bo Rum. So I will not be talking about those, but I will link my mid-month wrap-up down below if you want deeper thoughts about what I thought about those. But I do have another stack of books to talk about. I'm just going to start from the top of the stack and work my way down. I did read another Christian fiction that was one of my 5-star predictions and one of my Christmas book exchange books from this past Christmas. The British Booksellers by Christy Cambron. This was a historical fiction, World War I and World War II, second chance romance between these two characters. She was the socialite of the pair, and he was just a farmer's son. But they grew up as best friends, had a little bit of a love when they were young. Things split them apart. Social expectations of marrying well and all of that split them apart. And when they were young, they always kind of dreamed about owning a bookshop together. They loved to read, and it just was really, really sweet. Their friendship and young love. Then as they're adults in the more present day timeline, they both own bookshops and they're very antagonistic towards each other. And you kind of learn about what happened and why they are at the point they are now as the story unfolds. I'm not going to tell you my ratings for this or anything more about it because this is one of my 5-star predictions and I will be talking about it at the end of February. For my flip and roll TBR, one of my rolls was a random spinner wheel generator from my recommendations cart. And for that, I got A Mother's Promise by K.D. Alden. I'm also glad it got picked because it was a Christmas book exchange book as well. I really did enjoy this story. If you've read Take My Hand by Dolan Perkins Valdez or Necessary Lies by Diane Chamberlain, this is very similar to those. They kind of are all in the same family. It's about forced sterilization, ultimately. We follow a young woman named Ruth Ann who is a teenager throughout this story. She lives with her mother at this home for feeble-minded and epileptics. The mother is a resident, is a tough cookie, and Ruth Ann works in the workhouse and is labeled feeble-minded. And at one point, the doctor talks to Ruth Ann about she's going to be sterilized, and she refuses. And then kind of it gets a lawyer and it goes to court, and we kind of follow this family of Ruth Ann and her mother and other siblings as well. And also Ruth Ann's kind of coming of age. She had been taken advantage of, had a child at a young age, learning to love again, learning what it means to be a mother and doing whatever she can for her daughter. It was a heavy-hitting, hard book. I do think this was a good and important story. I just think I liked the other ones slightly better. And it's based on a true story of a landmark case. So that's kind of cool that part of the story was also based on reality too, which I always appreciate. I do read pretty widely, but the next two books were slightly out of my comfort zone. So I thought when I started them, but I really, really enjoyed both of them. The first one is A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent by Marie Brennan. This was a very unique story in that it was told as if it were memoirs, and it's written in kind of Victorian times, I would say, is the setting, except add dragons to the world. So we're following Lady Trent. It's her memoirs. Her voice was so strong in this book. The narrator was older Lady Trent reading her memoirs as a younger woman and kind of inputting her thoughts along the way as well. She's constantly is like, yeah, I was really young at that time and I've learned since then. And I really, really appreciated the voice of this. I also loved the setting in the world. Lady Trent in this story is a young woman who loves science and natural history and is not really allowed in this time period to have free reign in the library, but thankfully she has a dad who encourages her and kind of sneakily gets her the books that she wants, and she's able to find a husband who also encourages this side of her. But then we go on this adventure to go study dragons in a different part of the world that's developed here. I thought it was really good. I buddy read this with Julie from Keep Calm with Books and Coffee and Leandra from the TBR Zero. And I really enjoyed buddy reading with those ladies for the first time. We took the read pretty slowly. We didn't rush through, which was really lovely, but the pacing was a little slower and at times a little more intense. Like, it didn't get intense until later on in the book, but when it got intense, it got intense. So there were some fun adventures in here, but really we were watching Lady Trent grow and develop and broaden her horizons of people and cultures and just gaining intelligence and not being stupid. But she made some very questionable choices along the way, but it was a fun ride. It is the start of a series, and I possibly will continue the series later on this year, reading again with Julie and Leandra. So we'll see about that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. Surprise, surprise. Another book that may not be at first glance part of my comfort zone, but I did used to love dystopian novels. I went through a phase where I read tons of dystopian, and so this was a really fun ride for me as well. The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. And I buddy read this with two of my patrons, Jen and Shayna, and I had a fun time with this. There were so many questions. For at least half the book, I had no idea what was going on. The setup of this is that there's this island that's surrounded by this killer fog, and the fog is being held at bay, but the fog had basically destroyed the rest of the world. So we follow this group of people who live on the island, and there are a handful of elders who seemingly have lived very, very long lives and kind of run things, and everyone else is a bit of a worker bee to survive on this island. However, and for the majority of them, they don't question things, they don't step out of line. They're very kind towards each other. It's a very service mentality, but there are a few little discrepancies that make you kind of wonder what's going on here. What is the bigger story? Well, then one of the elders dies. Was it murder? What happened? Was it an accident? There's this mystery. And there's this intelligence, conscience almost, that's in everybody's mind, who speaks to them and kind of controls things a little bit. And one of the worker bees is tasked with solving the mystery, because as soon as the elder dies, the fog starts coming in again. So what happened? How can we keep the fog at bay? There's just so many questions. It was weird. It was twisty, and I loved it. I had such a fun time with this story. Such a fun time reading The Last Murder at the End of the World by Stuart Turton. Definitely an author that I will always buddy read if I read more books by him, because his mind is twisted. I also read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by him. Buddy read that one as well, because you just got to talk about it along the way to try to figure out what's going on. It was weird, but it was kind of wonderful. Oh, I forgot to put the dust jacket back on this, but this one is The Many Daughters of Ah Fong Moy by Jamie Ford, and this was my Patreon book club book for January. This also was very different, and we had a variety of responses in our book discussion about this. Some people giving it 3 stars and a handful, everything from 3, 4, and 5 stars, a little mix of everything. This is a very different structure of a historical fiction novel with a little element of strangeness in there, I guess. So the premise is, what if in our DNA we don't just carry physical attributes, but we also carry pain and trauma? And so we followed 7 different generations of Ah Fong Moy's family. Ah Fong Moy is the first Chinese woman to come to America. So her story was just devastating. How she ended up here, how she was kind of put in a circus type of place where she just was made a spectacle because of her different culture, the horrible things that happened to her. And then it jumps around in a non-linear way between all of these 7 different generations. In the most forward, the most present, or it's actually future generation, we're in 2050, and Dorothy is seeing an epigenetic cyst. I think that was the right word. A woman who studies this philosophy of epigenetics, where things are passed in your DNA that are not just physical attributes. So Dorothy has these dreams and memories and things of these past women and doesn't understand, but she's like, it's more than just a memory. It feels like it's me. And the scientist is like, yeah, it is you. All of them are you. So it's just kind of a weird scientific, I don't know. Some of it goes over my head a little bit. I really did enjoy this. It was very different from other historical fiction books that I read. I did learn a lot about Chinese American culture, each of the different generations at different times, and kind of like a slight look at what was going on, like during the Black Plague, and how a whole quarter of this city in California was blocked off and they were not letting Black people and Chinese people out. So they were kind of quarantined, and therefore many of them passed away. And then we learned a little bit about Lunar New Year and early on the Chinese Exclusion Act, like different aspects of Chinese American culture, which I think was super interesting. Foot binding was a part of the story. And then this whole idea of, do we carry the pain and trauma of past generations of our family? I don't know. I don't have an answer to that, but this book kind of explores what if we do, and how would that look like? So because of that, it was a very heavy book because we're in each of these 7 timelines in the midst of their trauma and the horrible things that happened to them. So there's a lot of trigger warnings in here for sexual assault, for abuse of different kinds, racism, lots and lots of different issues that are brought up that are heavy and sad, but it was just so interesting to me. I'm among the ones who did enjoy this, and I'm really glad that I finally read it. It's been on my shelves for a while. That was the end of all of my TBRs. I had finished everything for Flip and Roll and for the rolls that I did for Leandra's TBR-a-thon. I played the Paws and Bookshelves game. So I completed all of those books, which is amazing. So I then picked up this reading challenge. You might have seen it in my last weekend vlog, from a local bookstore. And so I've been reading, since I've had time, I've been reading reading for different prompts on this challenge board. So I had to read a childhood favorite, and I picked up The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis. This was such a fun book to revisit. I just really enjoy Peter, Susan, Lucy, and Edmund as they discover the wardrobe and head to Narnia for the first time. I forgot how annoying Edmund is. Edward. I think I said Edward. It's Edmund. I forget how annoying Edmund is at the beginning, but his story arc in here is really powerful. I love Aslan and how he's described by Mr. Badger as not safe, but good. And just the way that this world goes from winter to spring. And it's beautiful. I just love it so much. And it's definitely very nostalgic for me. So I really enjoyed revisiting that. And then I also listened to Letters from Father Christmas by J.R.R. Tolkien to fulfill the prompt of read a book originally published in the year you were born. So that one was published in 1976 and I have never read it, and it was a lot of fun. So apparently J.R.R. Tolkien used to write these letters to his kids. At least this is how the book is written, every Christmas. So he would be responding to letters that they would write to Father Christmas as Father Christmas. And there was a polar bear and a little elf that also wrote in the letters as well. There was some adventures that they went on, and flooding in the home, and like just different fun things. It was very sweet and Christmassy and a lot of fun. And I'm really glad that I read that finally. The final book that I've added to this list so far is random Gallant by V.E. Schwab. One of the prompts was read a book recommended by one of our booksellers. And so Jordan, one of the ladies at the bookstore, loves fantasy and YA. And so I picked up Gallant. I had it on my shelves, thought I would read it. And it was a lot of fun. So it has this idea where everything has a shadow. And in this world, we follow a young woman. What's her name? Olivia. When she's very young, Olivia is dropped off at this school by her mom. Maybe she was only 2 years old or something. And all she has of her mom is this journal that she's read over and over and over, and she kind of memorized. And Olivia is very different from the rest of the girls in the school and often is bullied and made fun of by them. So she's kind of living this solitary life. But then one day gets this opportunity to go to Gallant, which is an estate, and learns that she has family. And There's just something weird about her family, and there's a mystery in the mother's journals, and she's trying to figure everything out. Olivia just learns things along the way and ends up having to fight for her family and for herself, and learns about her parents as well along the way. It was very fantastical and a quick read. I don't know that it left like a big impression on me, but it was definitely a fun read while I was reading it. So I'm glad that I read that too. So all in all, I read 16 books in January. I completed my 5 books for Flip and Roll. I completed my 7 books with a little overlap for the Pause and Bookshelves readathon. I completed 2 of my 5-star predictions, Christmas book exchange books. Had a great time. I had a lot of really good reads in January, and I'm thrilled about that. I would love to hear if you've read any of these. Share your thoughts with me down below. And let me know what was one of your favorite reads in the month of January. I would love to hear that as well. Thank you so much for watching. And if you made it this far, but you don't really have anything to share in the comments and you want to let me know that you were still here, put a little dragon emoji in the comments for my dragon book that I read this month. I'm not a huge dragon book person, but I really did love this one. Just go ahead and put a dragon emoji in the comments if you would like. And that's going to be it for me today. I really appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me, and I look forward to talking with you in another video very soon. Bye.